Hi students, welcome to another episode of Exploring My City Through Art. And we are going to continue our Underground Railroad theme. And today we're going to talk about Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass was a very, very important person in New Bedford. He was a runaway slave from the South. He escaped slavery in Maryland in 1838 and he came to New Bedford. Remember I told you New Bedford was a safe haven for runaway slaves. He stayed at 21 7th Street with Polly and Nathan Johnson. They were abolitionists, people who tried to end slavery. Okay, abolish means to end, so the abolitionists. He also became one of the most famous abolitionists. He got his career as an orator right here in New Bedford. And an orator is somebody that gives speeches. So he gave many, many powerful speeches. He was a very important man. He was a very powerful man. So let's learn more about him and what the techniques we're going to use. We're going to revisit the Impressionist technique that I taught in another episode. And we're also going to express another technique called sponging, which is a great technique for background layers. And it's similar to Impressionists as well. But we are going to talk about Frederick Douglass and we are going to do some painting today. So enjoy, let's begin. Okay, so we are going to begin. What we have for you to use, we have a canvas board, nice and sturdy. Okay, this is 9 by 12. Put that aside, we don't need that yet. We have a printout of outline of Frederick Douglass and a quote, one of his quotes. I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong. He has many, many powerful quotes, okay? Good. And so we're going to work on this. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the Impressionist technique in the outline of Frederick Douglass. We're not going to do outside. We're going to cut around it when we're finished. It's easier to do it now and then cut around in case you go over the lines. It wouldn't be a problem, okay? We are going to cut these words, the quote, off so it doesn't get any paint on it because I want to use it at the end when we put together our final, okay? Now, let me show you, if you've never seen a picture, I'm sure you've seen a picture of him before, but this is a black and white copy, a coloring page. Here is a picture of him, and around the same age. This is as an older man. Remember, he came to New Bedford when he was 20. And so he was very young then. There are pictures of him when he's younger. Let me get another one. This is another one of him younger, right? We're going to use the other one because it's larger and there's more space for us to do our Impressionist techniques. Now, this is a book. He was also an author. So he was an orator. He gave speeches. He was an author of many books. And this is one of his famous and the most famous book, his autobiography, where he tells everything about his life, okay, and the ills of slavery and how he escaped to freedom and came to New Bedford. And then all the other years after, okay? So we are going to begin, and what we're going to do, we are going to have our paints ready. You're going to put your paints out into your palette. Now remember, for me, I always love to use the primary colors and mix them. So I have red, I have blue, I have yellow, and white. And you can get all the colors from there. However, I'm not going to not allow you to use other colors, you know. So you can put other colors out on the side, and then we can mix those as well. You can really have a nice time mixing those. So let me show you just a quick example. If you didn't do the Impressionist technique with me last time, look at an example of one. This is what I did with the episode of Impressionist technique. And if you look closely, it's a dotting and dabbing of the paintbrush. So it gives a very textural feel. And what it gives very sophisticated colors. As you take a little bit of each color and the brush spreads it in a very interesting way. It also creates a visual texture. This is another one example that we did for New Bedford with a lighthouse and boat. But you're seeing the style, the Impressionist style. This is what we're going to be painting on our printout. Okay? Okay, before we paint, I want you to cut off the quote. So you're just going to do a straight line. You can draw a straight line and then cut on it. But I'm just going to wing it and do a nice even cut. As even as I get. Please don't throw this away. Put it aside. We will be using it. So this, the project that we're going to be doing would be considered a mixed media project where we're doing collage, because this is paper. We're going to paint it, cut it out, and then stick it on top of our background that we're going to paint. Here are some examples of artwork that I did about Frederick Douglass. So this is a card version, but it was a larger piece. And this is using images, just like this is an image, a ready-made image, and incorporating it into my work. And these are different, at different stages of his life. Right here was when he came to New Bedford. He was young there. And this was the house. And this is a collage. Again, we did collage in our projects before. Collaire to stick. This is paper collage. And this is the house, 21 7th Street. Was his first free home where he lived with Nathan and Polly Johnson. They were abolitionists. Okay, so this is just to show you how artists use history and use famous people, and they can then do artwork that depicts stories and history, okay? So we are going to start with our Frederick Douglass. We cut out the quote, and we're going to start to paint. So here I have my recycled palette, and I'm going to start mixing color. Now, you can paint how you think it most realistic that you would like. What kind of color would be his jacket or coat, usually brown or black in that time. But I'm going to allow you, we're artists and we know what we're doing in terms of the history. This is Frederick Douglass, but we can change up the colors. So if you wanted to give some interesting colors to the clothes or whatever, it's up to you. You remember, I'm teaching you certain parts of history, but when we're exploring it in our art, okay? All right, so let's see. Okay, now, you know what I want to mix for you first so that you can know? I want to mix a few colors. Let's just do that in case you missed the episode where I mixed color. So let's mix some basic colors. We have our primary colors, and we're going to make secondary colors. So red and yellow make orange. So the first thing you're going to do, scoop out a little yellow, put it down, take a tiny bit of the red, and you mix it. And then you get an orange. I got a peachy one because my yellow is like a milky yellow. And then you could just keep adding. You want it darker? Okay. We also have yellow and blue, which makes green. And remember, always have your tissue paper at the side, okay? So that you can dab on it. You're not using, for those who never did this technique before, you're not using a ton of water. You want your paint thick, you want it with a little water in it so it can mix smoothly, but you don't want it watery like watercolor, okay? So you go with the yellow, we take a little bit of our blue, and we get a green. Now these become like pastel colors because my yellow is a light yellow. It all depends on the colors you use. If you were to use cadmium yellow, a bright yellow, you would get a different type of green, okay? And I like these. So you see my colors here? And another color I want to mix for you. Okay, so we have the secondary colors, green, orange, let's make purple. Now when I'm mixing my colors, I just want to show you that I'm taking out a little bit of the lighter color first and then adding the dark tip. Please don't do the other way around because you may end up wasting color. And there we get our purple. Okay, it looks like a dark red, but sometimes that is the purple that you get. It all depends on the type of colors you have. All right, the third color I want to mix is a brown. Now, brown will be all three primary colors. I start off with a generous amount of yellow, add a little red, maybe a little more, and then some blue. This is a light brown. Okay, so you can add to make it darker, or you can leave it like that, right? So, but the thing with the brown, you just have to keep going back and forth until you get the color that you want, all right? So, let's begin. Okay, so let's begin. And so I have all these colors mixed. I put some other colors I have here. I have some brown. I'm going to mix it with the brown that I have. And maybe I'm going to start with his face. And I want to show you how we're going to do this. You see my detailed brush? It's a little larger that I use for mixing. I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to use even a smaller detailed brush. And we're just going to dot and dab. Okay? Look at that. Dotting and dabbing. You can make some areas lighter, some areas darker. I'm not going over the eyebrows, okay? So the eyebrows are going to be the same color. Now remember, with Impressionist painting, it's dot and dabs, and I am not smoothing, I'm not smoothly painting. Look at that. And sometimes you can show some of the white of the paper come through. You can make variations, one side lighter, one side darker, depending on where the light is. You see what I did here? Good. Now for the hair, he was an older man now, so we can mix a gray. He was graying, so you can mix kind of like a gray to get for the hair. And then you can go any area you want, okay? Any area you want. So I did lips. And I'll leave the hair for a while. I'm going to go into this area. This is a larger area for his coat. I wonder what color I should do the coat. So I'm going to go back to a little bit of a larger brush. What color coat do you think I should do? Look at this cool purple, the cool purple I made earlier. You see why it's important sometimes to mix your colors so you have your colors all there waiting for you. You mix them, or you can use some ready-made ones. I have a ready-made purple here. But I have this purple, I like it. Maybe I mix some of the ready-made with it. And let's see what that does. Now, with the Impressionist, remember, you don't want to just dot and dab one color. You want to add a little white to it. Look at that. So if I add a little white to this, what do I get? A variation of that. It gets light and dark. Isn't that cool? Look at that. So some parts will be darker, some parts will be lighter. So I am just going to dot and dab. But remember, I'm staying within the lines. So this is like a coloring sheet, but we are using our painting technique, but we're keeping within the lines as if we are, coloring with our crayons or pencils. So I'm giving him a purple jacket. And as you notice, I use different purple. I use the purple that I mixed that looks almost like a brownish purple. I use the ready-made purple from my tube, and I use a little white. I use the white at the sides as if, the light's coming in and hitting on his jacket on that side. You seeing that? Look at that. So the Impressionist style gives a really interesting technique. It gives like an old sort of painting technique, painting style. For those who did not do my Impressionist lesson, the Impressionists were originally from France, the French Impressionists. The leader of that movement was Claude Monet. Okay? So that's the style we are working in. All right, where's my purple on this side? Just a little bit because here are other parts. So this part, the collar, I could change the color of it or I could make it like really light. Same purple but light, like a lilac. Because I still wanted to match the jacket. It's still part of the jacket. You know, sometimes if I want to get an edge, I might paint it smoothly and then go on top. Just so I get that edge and I don't feel like I'm losing control and going off. So I made my collar lighter. Okay, I'm okay if you know, some areas are smooth, but you can still see the brush stroke. Look at that. All right. The same color goes on this side here. So choose your colors, any color you want. I think he looks great in this purple suit. Look at that. Okay, and then we just keep continuing. Choose all your colors. Pick out your colors, what's going to be the bow tie, what is going to be inside, but you're doing it in this Impressionist technique. Okay, so I have some gray hair for his gray hair. Some gray hair for his gray hair. And I'm dotting and dabbing. I'm using the gray, the dark gray, as well as some white with it. So gray color, but the white adds to it. Look at that. It's quite effective, right? And so with this, with having the drawing done already, we can just focus on our Impressionist technique. So we continue the same gray, look at that, on the beard and the eyebrows. Okay, I missed a spot by the eyes. I left the white of the eye, go back in with my brown, right underneath here. Oops. Good. Okay, some small areas, you just fill it in. Okay, but remember the Impressionist technique, you want a nice small, because this is a small enough image, and we're just going in. So you want a nice detailed brush. So all of you will probably get a nice small detailed brush like that. Then let's go in with some of this orange, this peachy orange that I made earlier. You know, explore your mixing techniques. You can look at some of my other episodes to see how you mix color, but I gave you a basic tutorial right here with the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, and then you mix two of them at a time to get a secondary color. I mix my yellow and my red to get orange. In this case, it looks peachy. Nice and peachy. And I'm going to make his bow tie nice and peachy. And I'm also going to make the inside vest. Take your time with the dots and dabs. Now, when we do the dots and dabs, remember, it's important to not just use one color alone. Add a little white in it. Add a little yellow. Let it vary. Look at how I just added yellow and white, and the bottom part is lighter. It varies. So it's not just one flat color because we're not painting flat. With this technique, it gives a lot of character. See? Good. What color should we do the inside? Leave it white, maybe a little blue. So Frederick Douglass was born in 1818, as I told you before, and he was born a slave. He only saw his mother a few times before she passed, But he lived with his grandmother and then was taken to, start being a slave at around age 8. Could you believe that? So young, so sad, right? But even though he has a sad story in the beginning, look at what he became in the end. He was determined to get freedom. And guess how he learned that he was a slave and he needed freedom? Reading. That's why it's so important to learn how to read. How easy it is for us that we go to school and we learn how to read. But slaves were not allowed to know how to read. So they had to sneak. And Frederick Douglass, as a young boy, would sneak and hide to learn how to read. The slave master that he had at one time, a very brutal man, his wife actually started to teach Frederick Douglass the alphabet. But then he was mad. He said, do not teach slaves to read. Now, why do you think they did not want slaves to read? What happens to you when you read? You learn things. You become educated. You can understand what's happening. And they did not want them to understand that what was happening to them was wrong. When Frederick Douglass learned that he was a slave, it broke his heart. And he was determined to get freedom and determined to do what he needed to do to help to end this awful institution of slavery. All right, so we have our beautiful image of Frederick Douglass. Look at that. Good. At this point, you're going to let it dry. And then when it's fully dry, you're going to cut it out. Okay? So because I don't have time to let it dry, I'm going to cut it out for you to see. But I want you to please let it dry and then carefully go all around. All right, so let me see. Another fun fact about Frederick Douglass. There's so many. This was such an amazing man. Now, when he escaped slavery, you remember we talked about the Underground Railroad being a secret. They had code words. Code word, underground, meaning it was a secret. Code word was also the railroad, because at the time, the railroad was invented, so everybody was talking about the railroad. So anything related to the railroad and the trains were part of it, because nobody would know that's what they were talking about. So, for instance, you know a conductor on the train? Like if you go to a train station and you board the train, you'd see the conductor. The conductor comes around, snipping your tickets, making sure you have your tickets, etc. And so they use that term, conductor. And a conductor was actually, on the Underground Railroad, the conductor was actually someone who helped runaway slaves get to freedom. So they would meet them at different points. So, all these different codes of, okay, the train is leaving the station at 3 a.m. It was not really a train. It was the runaway slave was leaving at 3 a.m. when it was quiet and dark. And then he will go north for about 2 hours and meet the conductor, right, whose name is whatever. But the conductor in this case was somebody who helped the freedom seekers get to freedom. And you must have known of Harriet Tubman. She was a conductor. Would you believe she escaped slavery, but she went back into those dangerous parts of slavery for about how many times? 13 times? I believe it was 13 times. She risked her life and she risked her freedom to do that. But she believed so much in it. Okay, so these are all the code words. Also, how they dressed was another code way, right? Because people just think, runaway slaves were, barefooted and they were raggedy and etc. No, some of them disguised itself. Do you want to know how Frederick Douglass disguised himself? His wife, well, they weren't married at the time, Anna Murray, and then when they reached New Bedford and got married, she became Anna Douglass, but she sewed a sailor's uniform for him. Isn't that wonderful? So he dressed up as a sailor. And nobody knew the difference. Nobody knew that he wasn't a real sailor. He was very official in his sailor suit, and he escaped. There are many ways that runaway slaves escaped using disguise. Okay, so that's what Underground Railroad was. It was disguise. It was a secret. Okay, here we have our beautiful Impressionist style painting. So you can go over, you can lose some of that black outline, or I like it, you can leave it, or even when it's dry, you can go in with a pen and outline it more if you lost it, right? So this is what, in part 2, we're going to come back and we're going to put it together. What we're going to do, we're going to make a beautiful background, and we're going to use another painting technique called sponging. Similar to the dots and dabs, but it will give a different effect. It's a larger area, and we're going to sponge the whole thing and give a really lovely effect, and then piece it all together. Our Frederick Douglass portrait. Okay? Well, see you for part 2, where we piece this all together. Hope you enjoyed it. Welcome back, students. Part 2 of our portrait of Frederick Douglass. Now, last time we were together and we did part 1, we did our Impressionist style painting on our drawn out, outlined version of Frederick Douglass. Now we're going to piece it together and we're going to work on the background. Now the technique we're going to work on with the background is a sponging technique. Now as you see here, I love this technique. So I have tons of sponges. Look at all my sponges. Some with the big holes in it. Sponges from your kitchen with the little, rough edge on the other side. So all you need is just a regular sponge from the kitchen. Ask if you can get a piece, or if in your art bags, if you were doing that, you would get a little piece of sponge. So any kind of sponge. If you don't have a sponge, you can use a piece of paper towel crunched up together, right? And dot and dab. But if you can get sponge, that would be the best. Now here is an example of a sponging technique that I used. And depending on the shape, like this one was an edge like that. So it gave almost a similar sort of pattern, which is interesting. But sponging gives all a really interesting pattern and texture, a visual texture. Right? So it gives an interesting thing. And as you can see with this one, what I did, I went light to dark from the corner, very bright yellow, mixing with the red to give you oranges, into red oranges, and into deep reds. Okay, so you can vary it. This side here, I actually had reds, dark reds, and then I went on top of it. It dried a little bit, and I went on top of it with the yellow. So you're seeing some of the red peeking through. So that's the beautiful effect of sponging. And we are going to do that for our background. Let's put that aside and let's get our canvas board. Ready with your canvas board? 8 by 12. But you can use 8 by 10 as well, because the paper that this was on, the coloring page was on, was 8 by 10. So when you cut around it, you would have space. So I'm using that, and I'm going to place him on top of my background. So now we are going to do our background. Okay, I want to show you the color wheel, because I don't want you to just take every color under the sun and start dotting and dabbing, because then you will get mud. All your colors mixed together will give you muddy colors. So I want you to think carefully what your colors are. And I want you to choose one group. So this group, you have heard of fiery colors, hot colors, warm colors, okay? So you can use the variations of red, orange, yellows. And that's what I did with the example I showed you here. Or you can decide to use cooler colors, right? So you have your violets, your blues, blue violets, blue greens, okay? So I'm going to use the reds, oranges, red oranges, etc. I want a fiery feel. Now you can do it any way you want. I want you to think of light and dark. Now I am thinking, I have an idea in my head. Now, you don't have to do the same thing, but I am having an idea of my head in doing almost circles of this dots and dabs around. Just looking almost like a burst of light from the center outward. I did something similar when we did silhouette sunset paintings, but we did it with a brush. Here, we're doing it with sponge. So the first thing I want to do, I think I want to go with the white, but I could always go back in and then get darker. So I'm going to do white, but I'm going to, as you can see, I dabbed it in some white, and I'm putting a little yellow. And I'm going to start, if I want him here, I kind of want to see it there. Okay, so I'm going to do my circle here. You see what I did? It's light, but I'm kind of going, there's white there. Put a little more white in my palette. All right. So that is almost like a sun, the white, hot white light of the sun. And then you're going to get darker as it goes around. But what you're doing as you're adding a color, you're going back and forth, so it grades. It's a gradation, right? If you lose some of that hot white in the middle, you can put it back in again. So we have our yellow. We then want yellow-orange. We're not going into the red yet. Remember, we're going from white to yellow-orange. But when I put it in, I don't want to see a line. I want to then gently grade it so it feels like it's a gradation. We've done gradation before with a smooth paintbrush, and now we're doing it with a sponge. Now, do you see the similarity of sponging and Impressionist? With Impressionist, you're doing it with your paintbrush, and you're getting more of that individual brushstroke. Here, you're getting a different sort of feel with the sponge. I'm going in my reds now, making sure some are in the corner. Look at that. Blending into the orange. Now, this is all about blending. Right? So if you see it's too red up there, go back in your orange. Go back in your yellows. Trust me, you can go over and over this and get exactly what you want. Just have a little patience and have fun. Look at how that's coming on, right? And have fun with it. You want your red, the darkest colors, all on the edge because it's darker on the edge, and then it comes in lighter to that white dot, which almost like the sun rays. Okay. Ran out of some red. Let's get some more red in there. We'll have a darker red. Ooh, look at this dark red here. But even if you use different types of reds and oranges, you're all mixing it together by grading it in. Okay, take your time with your sponge. See which sponge you like, what works for you. Sometimes the shape of the sponge will give you a shape, a pattern shape. Have you seen this? Almost like lines. You can go with it or you can smooth it out. But I want you to see a gradation. Make sure you are seeing dark to light, light to dark. And be careful as you hold the edge, because then you'll get your fingerprints like I just did. But easy to remedy, just go right over. Okay? So I want a little more orange and yellow in this area. And if you think you have too much red, you can add some orange to it. Going in with my yellow. Look at that. trying to get the effect of that circle. So I want to put more orange here. I had too much yellow there. I can go back in. You can change your mind. I'm doing that kind of circular effect, but you don't have to do it. You can do light to dark from the corner and then go down. Or you can just randomly, all your warm colors, back and forth, back and forth. Like in this dark area here, if I was to take some of the yellow and orange, right, maybe even a little white, look at this. That gives a nice effect too. You might want that. You might want that kind of repetitive pattern. Look at that. Be creative with this. Think of light on top of dark, dark on top of light, right? That actually looks like rays of light beaming up. And you see we have our hot, warm area there. It works lovely. So I want you to continue this. Take your time. Use your colors, whether you're using the warm colors or the hot colors or the cool colors, right? And then you have your background. All right. I just want this kind of beam, but you don't have to do that. You can change it up. You can switch it up. Okay? But what you don't want to do is that you're going over it so much that you just have created a smooth one color. You don't want to see one color, because if I was to go over and over, I would probably get this kind of peachy color here, flat. You can do it over and over where it's flat. So you want to keep some of those little highlights. You want to keep a variation of dark and light. Okay? I want my corners to be darker. So I'm going in with more of my red. See? All right. So there you have it. And let's let it dry, okay? So continue with that and let's let it dry. So we are back and we have our beautiful sponged background, okay? We use the sponge to create this wonderful effect, very textural. We use warm colors, so we use the yellows and orange and yellow oranges and red oranges, etc. I said you could use the warm hot colors, or you can use the cooler colors like the purples and the blues, etc. Now, because I used cooler colors on his jacket, I thought it would be nice contrast, so I didn't want to use the cooler colors on the back. So now we're going to piece it together, right? We are going to glue this down, but I don't want you to just choose anywhere and glue it down. Think about it. Now, I did this for a reason. I did this like hot spot here, almost like the sun and the rays. To me, it shows like, you know, the importance of his history, of his story, and the light he beamed to the future, what he taught us, and how we are carrying on his legacy by telling all the great things that he did. Okay? So look at this. So you move it around. Do you want him here, here, here? You know, think about it. What works best? Now, we are also going to put in this quote of his, okay? And I don't want you to just stick it down. Think of an interesting way to do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut out each line and then move them around the piece and see what I get. So carefully cut them out. If you don't think you have a steady straight hand, please draw. Use a ruler and a pencil and draw lines. And then cut on those lines. I'm not doing that because I don't want time to go too fast and to take up too much time, too much of your time. I want you to see the result right away. However, I want you to take your time. Really take your time with these. Okay, another fun fact about Frederick Douglass. I said he was an author. I showed you one of his books, his autobiography, famous. But he also owned the North Star, which was a publication, a newspaper. And there he talked about the ills of slavery. So here we have the strips, and I'm thinking how we can do this. We can move it around, right? I would unite with anybody to do right. I want that at the top. And with nobody to do wrong, right? Maybe on that part. I could overlap it with, you seeing what I'm doing here? This is the decisions that artists make. And I want you to do that. And you're moving it around because you're trying to see composition. Composition is how you compose different elements. These are all elements onto one page or, format, and see how it works as one. And the negative space which is behind there is just as important as the positive space. So you don't want too much negative space. Let's see. If you put them here and then you put all the words down here, you have that, but you have then a lot of negative space here. So I would want to spread it out a little bit, create some negative space, and then this. So I think I'm going to push this over here a bit. I would unite with anybody. I can put this in front of him too, to do right. Right? And nobody to do wrong. It evens out all the words there. Should I put it left? But you take your time, you think about it, you move around. That's why you don't glue it down right away. But eventually, you're going to have to make a decision. You don't want to spend 2 hours, 10 hours deciding where to put the work. Okay? I think I like it like this. Okay, do I want that there or... I'm standing up because I need to see it from a bit of a distance. So get into the habit of doing that. Stand up or even walk away from the piece and look at it from a distance and see how it works, how it feels. Right? You can do them straight. You can do it at an angle. You know what I mean? You decide. This is your piece, your portrait. I think I'm going to go with that and then put him right around there. More to the right, not exactly in the middle. Just a little bit like that. I think that would be wonderful. And then we glue it down. Okay, I have my stick glue. You can do stick glue or you can use a little white glue. Make sure it gets on the edges. Now, this is thin paper, so the glue will be good. I will do Frederick Douglass first. So I turn him upside down. And look at how I glue mine. Right at the edge first. All the way around the edge. A lot of students forget and they just do a little something in the middle and they don't do the edges. So the edges are always curling up. And that's never a good thing. It doesn't look good and then it pops off. You want it to lay down flat. Okay? Okay, I think I want him there. Ta-da. Make it even, straight, or at an angle if you want. You decide. What do you think works best? Any areas that are peeking up? I'm going to put a generous amount. Nice. Okay. Because even if you put it on the edge, sometimes you just need a little more. So a little edge peeking up here. In this class, when we used to be together live doing art together, I would go around and I would flip up the edges of students who was like, what's this? What's this? There always be areas curled up. So you want to go through and make sure there are no areas curved up. Look at this one is curled up. So I'm just putting the glue right on the board. So there's another layer of it. Make sure it's down flat. Okay, and then we can do our letters. Now where'd my letter go? Oh, you have to be careful with that because sometimes that happens. I'm wondering if to put it right on there. No, I was doing that because this part was curving up. Let's put some here. Make sure that's flat and nice. Good, and then I want this more to the right. Okay, so I take my strip of paper, put a generous amount of glue, and I figure out where I want this, more to the right, but not right on the edge. You know, I want a little space here, but you can go right to the edge if you want. And then I'm going to do these. And I want it straight, so I'm making it straight. But if you were going to make it crooked, you want to do it on purpose. So if it's diagonal or angle, and you repeat it. So it must look like you're doing it for a reason, you know? And last strip. I love it. Did I make that nice and straight? Yeah, a little. It's a little wonky. Right. I'm gonna put a little more glue here. So now what you're just gonna do, you're cleaning it up, making sure the edges are glued down properly. If the stick glue is not gluing as much, you use some of the white glue. Use a little paintbrush. You don't need to dilute it. Right. All right. Here you have it. And so at this point, I just want the different things to me that make it pop. You know, that Impressionist technique really has an old-fashioned sort of style to it. I love. So this is what I like to do when I use text to make it integrate with the work. And I already have lines on him. I think I'm going to go over the lines because I like that. So I'm going to repeat these lines, and I like to outline. Now, this is something that I just do because I like it. Okay, so my pen is running out. So you get a pen that works, a marker or paint pen that works, and you can outline. It either didn't work or it was on some of the glue. So you have to be careful about that. So that's why you have to let it dry and let the paint dry as well. Okay? You see the outline? It gives it makes it pop. It makes it pop. And then what I'll do is go in on some parts of his drawing and do the outlines. So there you have it. So what I did was I just went in with the black pen. I found my black pen, my black marker, and I did a nice bold line around all of the text just so that it will pop out. You don't have to do that, but I think it's a nice way of making the quote seem like an important thing, because it was an important thing because he was a very important man. He did lots of speeches and he had lots of insight, very educated. So that teaches us so much that, you know, we take for granted the things like going to school. Sometimes we don't want to go to school, we don't want to read. He had to teach himself to read, right? So I hope you had a lot of fun with this. As I said, I outlined that, and I also went in with my black paint pen and I outlined the dark lines around our original, because you remember it came with the outline of black. So you're seeing it here, and it just makes it a little more, it pops, and it also matches the outline of the text. So I thought this was a really fun exercise. I hope you had a great time too. Remember, all of the points we talked about, Frederick Douglass and an underground railroad. Remember, it wasn't underground and it was not a railroad. And also, in terms of the art techniques, what did we do? We learned about Impressionist techniques. We used the Impressionist techniques in the figure of Frederick Douglass, dots and dabs with your paintbrush. And then we did a technique for the background with sponges, with a sponge. This was the sponge we used. And it gives that kind of dots and dabs, but a different feel, okay? A different feel. We also learned about warm colors and hot colors. Warm colors, and cool colors, right? So you learned a lot in this exercise. I hope you enjoyed it totally. I did. And I will see you for another episode of Exploring My City Through Art. Bye.